Hello everyone. In this video, we will analyze a brilliant attacking game between Grigory Serper and Ioannis Nikolaidis, played at St Petersburg, Russia in 1993. This game showcases a stunning positional sacrifice, followed by relentless attacking play, culminating in multiple pawn promotions and a spectacular tactical finish. Serper demonstrates exceptional technique in converting his advantage, despite Black's desperate counterplay. Let's dive into this masterpiece and see how White's strategic vision leads to a devastating attack. Serper opens with pawn to c4, choosing the English opening, which offers flexibility and control of the d5 square. Nikolaidis responds with pawn to g6, preparing to fianchetto the kingside bishop in typical King's Indian style. Serper plays pawn to e4, transposing into a more aggressive setup and controlling the center. Nikolaidis develops his bishop to g7, completing the fianchetto and placing the bishop on the powerful long diagonal. Serper advances pawn to d4, establishing a strong pawn center and controlling key central squares. Nikolaidis plays pawn to d6, supporting his center and preparing to develop his pieces in a solid structure. Serper develops his knight to c3, reinforcing control of the center and preparing further development. Nikolaidis develops his knight to f6, attacking the e4 pawn and bringing another piece into play. Serper plays knight to e2, an unusual but flexible move that keeps options open for the knight to go to g3 or f4. Nikolaidis develops his knight to d7, a solid developing move that prepares to support the center. Serper repositions his knight to g3, aiming to control key squares and potentially support a kingside attack. Nikolaidis plays pawn to c6, solidifying his center and preparing to expand on the queen side. Serper develops his bishop to e2, completing his kingside development and preparing to castle. Nikolaidis plays pawn to a6, preparing to expand on the queen side with b5. Serper develops his bishop to e3, placing it on a solid square where it supports the center. Nikolaidis boldly pushes pawn to h5, beginning an aggressive plan on the king side and preparing to create weaknesses in White's position. Serper plays pawn to f3, reinforcing his center and preparing to support his pieces with a solid structure. Nikolaidis continues with pawn to b5, advancing on the queen side and trying to create counterplay. Serper advances pawn to c5, gaining space and challenging Black's pawn structure. Nikolaidis captures with pawn captures on c5, accepting the challenge and opening lines. Serper recaptures with pawn captures on c5, maintaining a pawn on c5 and restricting Black's pieces. Nikolaidis moves his queen to c7, centralizing the queen and preparing to coordinate his pieces. Serper castles kingside, bringing his king to safety and connecting his rooks. Nikolaidis pushes pawn to h4, continuing his aggressive kingside expansion and trying to create threats. Serper retreats. His knight to h1, a deep positional move preparing to redeploy the knight while avoiding Black's advancing pawns. Nikolaidis moves his knight to h5, repositioning on the rim, but creating potential threats. Serper moves his queen to d2, connecting his rooks and preparing to support his position. Nikolaidis advances pawn to e5, gaining space in the center and preparing to create complications. Serper repositions his knight to f2, bringing the knight back into play and preparing to defend key squares. Nikolaidis retreats his knight to f8, repositioning to support his king and preparing to coordinate his pieces. Serper pushes pawn to a4, challenging Black's queenside pawn chain and preparing to create weaknesses. Nikolaidis advances pawn to b4, pushing forward and trying to create passed pawns on the queen side. Serper plays the powerful knight to d5, jumping into the center and creating immediate tactical threats. Nikolaidis captures with pawn captures on d5, eliminating the strong knight but opening lines for White's pieces. Serper recaptures with pawn captures on d5, maintaining a strong central pawn and preparing to push it forward. Nikolaidis plays pawn to f5, trying to create counterplay and open lines for his pieces. Serper advances the critical pawn to d6, creating a dangerous passed pawn deep in black's territory. Nikolaidis moves his queen to c6, trying to blockade the pawn and coordinate his defense. Serper plays bishop to b5, pinning black's queen to the king and creating devastating tactical threats. Nikolaidis captures with pawn captures on b5, forced to accept doubled pawns to break the pin. Serper recaptures with pawn captures on b5, winning the exchange as black's queen must move. Nikolaidis captures with queen captures on b5, taking the pawn but allowing white's rooks to dominate. Serper captures the rook with rook captures on a8, winning the exchange and gaining a significant material advantage. Nikolaidis moves queen to c6, trying to centralize and defend against white's overwhelming position. Serper activates his other rook to a1, doubling on the a-file and preparing to invade black's position. Nikolaidis pushes pawn to f4, trying to create threats against white's king, but weakening his own position. Serper plays rook to a7, invading the 7th rank and creating unstoppable threats. Nikolaidis retreats his knight to d7, trying to defend, but the position is already critical. Serper captures the bishop with rook captures on c8 check, forcing black's king into danger. Nikolaidis recaptures with queen captures on c8, forced to take to get out of check. Serper moves queen to d5, centralizing the queen and creating multiple threats. Nikolaidis captures with pawn captures on e3, taking the bishop and trying to create counterplay with the advanced pawn. Serper plays queen to e6 check, delivering a powerful check and forcing black's king to move. Nikolaidis plays king to f8, moving the king away, but walking into further danger. Serper captures the knight with rook captures on d7, winning more material. Nikolaidis advances pawn to f2 check, creating a dangerous passed pawn with check and fighting for counterplay. Serper moves king to f1, escaping the check and preparing to deal with black's threats. Nikolaidis moves queen to e8, defending and trying to coordinate his pieces. Serper plays rook to f7 check, delivering another powerful check and maintaining the attack. Nikolaidis captures with queen captures on f7, forced to take the rook. Serper plays queen to c8 check, continuing to harass black's king with checks. Nikolaidis blocks with queen to e8, defending against the check, but remaining in a desperate position. Serper advances pawn to d7, pushing the passed pawn to the 7th rank and threatening promotion. Nikolaidis plays king to f7, trying to stop the pawn, but the position is hopeless. Serper promotes with pawn captures on e8, promoting to queen with check, capturing black's queen and promoting simultaneously. Nikolaidis recaptures with rook, captures on e8, forced to take but now facing two queens. Serper plays queen to b7 check, attacking with one of his queens. Nikolaidis blocks with rook to e7, desperately trying to defend. Serper advances, pawn to c6, pushing another passed pawn forward. Nikolaidis pushes pawn to e4, trying to create his own passed pawn as a last hope. Serper advances pawn to c7, pushing the pawn to the 7th rank and threatening another promotion. Nikolaidis pushes pawn to e3, advancing his dangerous passed pawn and creating threats. Serper plays queen to d5 check, forcing black's king to move. Nikolaidis plays king to f6, moving away from the check. Serper plays queen to d6 check, continuing to check and force black's king around. Nikolaidis plays king to f7, moving back to defend. Serper plays queen to d5 check, checking again and maintaining control. Nikolaidis plays king to f6, forced to move again. Serper plays queen to d6 check, repeating the check, but now preparing the final blow. Nikolaidis plays king to f7, moving back once more. Serper captures the rook with queen captures on e7 check, winning the rook and delivering check. Nikolaidis recaptures with king, captures on e7, forced to take. Serper promotes with pawn promotes to queen on c8, creating a second queen and sealing the victory. Nikolaidis develops bishop to h6, trying to create threats, but it's too late. Serper plays queen to c5 check, checking with the new queen. Nikolaidis plays king to e8, moving away from the check. Serper plays queen to b5 check, continuing to harass black's exposed king. Nikolaidis plays king to d8, trying to escape. Serper plays queen to b6 check, delivering another check. Nikolaidis plays king to d7, moving the king again. Serper captures with queen captures on g6, winning black's pawn and eliminating counterplay. Nikolaidis pushes pawn to e2 check, creating a dangerous passed pawn with check as a last desperate attempt. Serper captures with king captures on f2, taking black's dangerous pawn and escaping the check. Nikolaidis plays bishop to e3 check, giving a final check, but the game is decided. Serper plays king to e1, moving the king to safety and maintaining his overwhelming material advantage. With two queens and a 1 position, white will soon deliver checkmate, and black resigns shortly after. This spectacular game demonstrates Grigory Serper's exceptional attacking technique and tactical vision. The breakthrough with the d6 pawn, the exchange sacrifice, and the stunning double queen promotion showcase the highest level of chess artistry. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this game, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments your favorite move or moment from this masterpiece.